Good morning, everyone. I am super excited to chat with you today. It is a beautiful morning. It is the end of February. It has been snowing and ice storming and like 30 degrees here in Central Virginia for weeks. And today it's in the 60s, and so I'm feeling great and I'm super excited to talk to you because I have been planning this video for quite a while. So I'm really excited to get started and dive in. Hey guys, my name's KayAnne Myer. I am your virtual sales coach. If you've never been to my channel before, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, like this video. I have literally been in sales and marketing and business development and coaching for the past decade. And so my goal here on this channel is I just give you all of my tips and tricks that I have spent thousands of hours developing for myself to turn myself into an amazing sales professional. Also a business owner. I've owned a magazine for the past 7 years. I started this channel in order to share with you guys everything I have learned over the years, with the goal of this being a very holistic, interactive process. So you kind of have to subscribe and watch all of my videos because I go into detail from the multiple sales training platforms I've learned on over the years. I've integrated everything I've learned from books I've read and coaching I've received and coaching I've performed. So this is like the ins and outs, and I really can tell you, I promise, if you actually stick around, stay tuned through the whole video, if you check out all the other videos I offer and you make a concerted effort to actually apply the principles I teach you in your business, you are gonna see just amazing results. You are gonna put money in your pocket. You are going to be able to live the life you've always wanted to live, right? Sales is amazing because you can make so much money. The earning potential is unlimited. Now guys, when I started in sales 10 years ago, my closing ratio, the amount of orders I would fill based on how many appointments I would go on, was just 7%. Okay, I built my business from the ground up on 7% closing ratio, and it was a ton of work. I was relentless. I don't want you guys to have to work as hard as I did. So I'm gonna share everything it took years for me to develop. And I went from closing at 7% to closing at 50 to 60% of my sales appointments. So there is no magic bullet here. You have to put in the work, but if you do and you follow what I teach you in these videos, you are going to see your success skyrocket. So guys, hang tight, stay with me, do not miss any part of this video, and check out the rest of my videos because we are gonna dive into some amazing topics. Now, I am particularly excited about today. This whole concept, as I've pieced it together from a number of different coaching platforms and learning modalities over the years, this one topic has just always fascinated me and stuck with me, and I loved incorporating this into my sales. So I remember when I first started selling, and even sometimes to today, you know, you think you got it all down, you've got the script, you've got the close, you've got everything in between, and you feel like you're just so ready. And then you get there, and then you just never know who you're gonna be sitting in front of and all their unique human intricacies and their idiosyncrasies and all their neuroses. So many things that make us tick as human beings. And people are unpredictable and people are emotional creatures. And that's why sales can be so difficult. You have something that's seemingly so straightforward, but then you've got this living, breathing, dynamic human in front of you and you just never know what you're gonna get. And that's what makes this career super thrilling and exciting, but it also can be really frustrating sometimes because there's so much that's just not in your control. So guys, today I'm gonna teach you something that I think you can apply in every one of your meetings. And it really humanizes the entire thing because at the end of the day, we are all people and we all share this in common. All right, so guys, the first thing I wanna share with you is there is an old school model of sales, and then there's the way I do it, and I call it a consultative model of sale. A lot of it is about your mindset, so I'm gonna make a separate video on mindset for you. But if you think about the way a lot of people traditionally have sold, a lot of sales is fear-based, right? So we are exploiting a need that we create, but it's based on lack. It's based on what people are afraid of, and we exploit their fear. And quite frankly, I just feel icky when I do that. I'm not saying that salespeople have not had success doing that, but I integrate sales into my spiritual mission, and so I don't quite feel right exploiting people's fear. And you guys know what this sounds like, right? It's when you're saying to someone, well, you better sign up today because this deal ain't gonna be here tomorrow. And you're making them operate from a place of fear. And I personally think that's gonna lead to more dissatisfaction for yourself and your client. I think it's gonna lead to scaring people away. And so the first thing I wanna teach you guys today is if you think about the human brain. The human brain is divided into a couple of different sections. Now, I am not a neuroscientist. I may not say this perfectly, but we have the front of our brain, which is called the prefrontal cortex, right? Then the middle of our brain is called midbrain. And then we have the back, which is the neocortex. Now, the prefrontal cortex, that is the more reptilian part of our brain. That part evolved first. And that's the place where we experience the fight or flight feeling, right? That's where we operate out of fear. That's where we have all of those negative emotions, and that traditional sales model is really taking place in that prefrontal cortex. Now, that's also where we have things like adrenaline and cortisol and those negative hormonal states, which we're gonna come back to later. You cannot make sales in the prefrontal cortex. When you have someone operating out of fear, it just does not work as well. The midbrain is where we have all of our fuzzy, lovey-dovey feelings. We've got our positive emotions, we've got love, we've got all those, I like to call them warm and fuzzies. We've got our warm and fuzzies in the midbrain. Now, the midbrain is where we make sales, right? We want to keep people excited, and we want to make them happy, and we want them to associate good feelings with our product. Now, the neocortex, that's where we have more of the logical reasoning, mathematics portion of our brain. So here's the moral of the story. If you can keep people out of their prefrontal cortex, you can move. Now they're gonna come to every meeting and they're gonna be in that reptilian prefrontal cortex. They don't know you, they're afraid of being sold. No, everybody, this is what a mentor once told me, everyone wants to buy, no one wants to be sold. So when they sit down, your job is to transition them from that prefrontal cortex into their midbrain. Now if you, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. If you can do that, right? Get them warm and fuzzy, get them in that midbrain with all the corresponding trust and love and good feelings. Then what you have to do is you have to back up that feeling with mathematical, logical reasoning. You have to have them justify the good, warm, and fuzzy feelings of the midbrain with logical reasoning that, hey, this is a good deal in the neocortex. If you can do that, if you can marry the midbrain and the warm and fuzzies with the neocortex and the reasoning that, hey, this is a heck of a good financial decision, guys, you got yourself a sale, okay? So now the best way to do this, the best way to transition people into their midbrain is by storytelling, right? Guys, we are all at our cores. We are all storytellers. It's part of human nature. It's how we communicate. And I want you guys, if you want to be amazing salespeople, you need to refine your ability to do storytelling. Now, you don't have to do this on the fly. This can all be planned out, and that's what we're going to work on today. But I'm going to challenge you guys to have a couple of stories in your back pockets that you can pull out to create a hormonal response in your prospect that puts them into midbrain. We all operate in our bodies. We have all of these chemicals floating around called hormones, and they communicate with our brain and our body. And I'm not a neuroscientist. I don't know all the nitty-gritty, but I do know this. There are 3 chemicals in our bodies, hormones, that create positive, uplifting emotions. And we want to use storytelling in our sales appointments in order to create these states of mind and body in our prospects. So the first thing we want to do is we want to have a story that induces dopamine. Now, what is dopamine? Dopamine is a hormone that creates suspense and often leaves you with a cliffhanger. Now, all storytelling in its core actually induces dopamine, so you can pretty much tell any story and dopamine will be something that you automatically induce. Now, dopamine creates focus, it creates motivation, and it induces memory. So it helps people hold on to what we are saying. Now guys, I remember I have owned a magazine for the past 7 years. And when I started this magazine, I had to go out and I had to sell advertising into a magazine that did not yet exist. So I had to talk about it as if it had already happened. And believe me, it's not easy to sell a product or a service when you actually have nothing to show for it. But that's exactly what I had to do. And I will never forget, this was a neighborhood newsletter. And so it's about these people who live in a neighborhood, and it's about, their kids and their pets, so stories about neighborhood events and who went on vacation and who went to this party, and kind of like a society type pages, but for a particular neighborhood. So I'm out there, I'm selling advertising in my local market, I'm cold calling, I'm setting appointments with businesses, I'm going to these businesses, I'm sitting down with the owners, and I'm trying to tell them all the reasons why it makes sense to invest in this theoretical magazine. But that's exactly what I had to do, and I'll never forget, finally, so I had to pay for all of the printing, and I had to pay for the postage, and I had to pay for all these pages, and I had to fill those pages with advertising and stories. And when I started, I am sure family members and friends thought I was off my rocker. I was completely going insane, because now that I actually talk about it, I realize, wow, that was kind of insane. And I'm really glad that I was maybe dumb enough at the time to not understand how far-fetched it was, because if I had known how hard it would have been, I might not have gone through with it. But guys, it was worth it in the end, I will tell you that. So I'm out there, I'm doing my work, and I finally get to a point where I am in the positive, right? In terms of the amount of advertising I've sold, the income is now positive. Maybe it was $1,000 or $2,000. And I had invested everything into this business. All my savings, all my 401k. It took me 4 months from the time I started to the time I had a physical magazine in my hand. My family, we had 2 children, we still have 2 children, but one of them was just born. I had just given birth to my second son. He was 3 months old when we started this business. And my other son was 4. And my husband stayed home with the kids while I went out and I did this, and we had to use all of our savings to live on and pay for our basic expenses while we went through this process. So by the time I went to go publish this magazine, I was terrified, we were out of money, and I had to literally publish because we needed money to survive. That's the level that we were at that point in time. And I'll never forget getting a phone call, and the family that we had it was the featured family. It was get to know your neighbors, kind of an article. So I found this just cutest family, and they agreed to do a photo shoot, and I interviewed them and wrote an article. And at the very last moment, I had already sent 600 copies to the printer, right? I had sent them to print 600 copies. And I get a phone call, and on the other line is Todd, the guy who was the father of the family. And Todd said, "Hey Crystal, how's it going?" And I had this gut feeling that maybe it was gonna be bad news. And I said, "Hey Todd, what's up? How can I help you?" And he's like, "Hey, look, Crystal, I have some potentially bad news for you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he says, "Well, we really appreciate everything you did. We appreciate the opportunity, but unfortunately, one of our neighbors came over and said that you are scamming the neighborhood. And you seem like a really nice person. It's not personal, but we're gonna have to pull our story from your magazine." Now guys, I've already sent this thing to the printers. I've already put thousands of dollars on the line to print this thing. I've already paid for the postage to mail it out. This is my inaugural issue. His family, which he doesn't know yet, is on the cover, and he wants to pull the story. Guys, can you imagine my panic, my fear? I started crying hysterically, and all I could say was, oh my gosh, Todd, I am so sorry. No, I can't. I've already sent this, and I did say to him it's already been printed, even though I knew it had gone to the printers. It wasn't actually printed yet, but I said, Todd, it's been printed. I started crying. I'm so sorry. What can I do to make this up to you? Now, guys, you know, God was with me, angels, whatever you want to say. Luck, it was all, the universe aligned to the point where Todd was perfectly kind and lovely about it. He said, no worries, Crystal, I'll explain it to my wife, we'll deal with it, no problem. You know, I appreciate you listening and I appreciate you giving it consideration, but it's fine. Now, guys, Todd actually, once the magazine hit the mailboxes of all of his neighbors and himself, they received so much positive affirmation, and people were so complimentary about this article on their family. They were like the little neighborhood celebrities. They absolutely loved it. The kids and their friends were super excited, to the point where they ordered 15 extra copies to hand out to their parents, their cousins, their family members, friends who didn't actually live in the neighborhood. That was the level of excitement that they had, okay? So guys, in that story, I just want you to know that's a real story I used to tell on my sales appointments. I don't know if you felt it, but you probably had more focus, motivation. You wanted to find out what was gonna happen. How was this gonna end? Because it was a precarious situation to be in. So there was a cliffhanger that was inducing dopamine. So guys, what I want you to do is I want you to find your own story. And if you're new to sales and you don't have any of your own stories, go ahead and borrow someone. There's gotta be someone else in your organization, someone you know, who can help you come up with a story that has a little bit of suspense built into it, has a cliffhanger. So you can insert this one story into your sales presentation, and you can create the emotional hormonal response of dopamine. And you don't have to go nuts, just one story is enough, and you can repeat this one on all of your sales presentations to induce dopamine. Now, the second one I want you to induce is oxytocin. Now, oxytocin it's a hormone that creates generosity, it creates trust, it creates a bonding experience. Oxytocin creates empathy in our bodies, and it reminds us how human we all are. We all have the same emotions, we have the same hormonal responses, we're all human. So that's what oxytocin is. Now, I remember this one time I did an article on this older gentleman contacted me. And so what he did is he created these historically accurate battle scenes. Now he would do now this guy, he was probably like 95 or 100 years old. He could barely walk, he'd shuffle along, sweetest little old man. And he invited me to his home, and he had one entire room completely decorated with these figurines that he would make of these battle scenes. And he would tell me the stories. And you know, what was so touching is every time I would do an article on an older person like him who was by himself, living alone, I would be prepared to stay there for hours because they didn't have anyone to hang out with or talk to a lot. And so I would just give them my time, and they would just tell me all their stories, and they would feed me and give me tea, and we'd sit there for hours. And that's exactly what happened here. And I remember him showing me, he would just painstakingly paint all these figurines, and he had these ships, and he'd tell me about the battles. And I'll never forget him saying, "Thank you so much for coming." And I remember saying to him, "Your grandkids must freaking love it here. This is like, oh my gosh, they probably want to get their grubby little hands all over it, and they want to play with it." And he got really quiet, and he said, "Crystal, you know what? I haven't seen my grandkids in 3 years." And I was just shocked. And he said, "You are the first person who's ever stepped in this room, and I'm sharing it with you for the first time." And I just thought, oh my gosh, like I almost cried. It was so sad to hear him, this wonderful man with all this life experience and this hobby that he's so enthusiastic about, and he has nobody to share it with. And it was so sad and heartbreaking. But the cool thing was I was able to write this article for him, and he called me a couple weeks after he received the magazine, and he said, "Thank you so much." Not only was it fun for him to be part of the article, but introducing his work to the neighborhood, he actually had neighbors who were kind enough to knock on his door and ask to come in and see the room and see all the battles that, you know, the little figurines he had made. And so for the first time in years, he now had so many more visitors coming to see him. And it was just such a blessing to him to have that. So guys, whatever it is that your story is, you know, you want to create empathy. We all know what it's like to feel lonely. We all have the same fears and motivations and doubts. And so Oxytocin, you will pick out one story where you can generate empathy and that trust and generosity and bonding. And guys, the last thing we're gonna do, we're gonna generate dopamine with one story. We're gonna generate oxytocin with the other story. And finally, we're going to generate endorphins. We're gonna have a third story or a third way to get people laughing. Endorphins make people feel creative, they feel relaxed, they feel focused, they're laughing, they're having a great time. So guys, that's what you're gonna do, right? We're gonna go through this process. We're gonna have storytelling. We're gonna write down 3 stories where we can induce dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins. We are going to transition people from their prefrontal cortex of fear, fight, or flight. We're gonna transition them into their midbrain, right, with all these wonderful stories and all this cocktail of hormones that feels great. And then we're gonna back it up with a mathematical, logical, financial decision that makes them say, hey, this product or service that this gal's selling to me right now is actually a really good deal. If you can do that and you can get midbrain backed up by neocortex using pre-planned story, guys, that is where it's at. That's how you're gonna make more sales. Guys, I hope you learned something from this video. This was super exciting topic. I was so excited to cover with you. It is so effective and it is high level advanced sales tactics. So guys, go out there, write down your stories, memorize your stories, know where in your presentation you're going to implement these stories, get them into midbrain, back it up with a logical financial decision that this is a good deal. And I cannot wait to hear about your success. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you wanna up your game. And in the comments, I would love to hear about how all these techniques are coming together, how you are increasing your sales efficiency, how you are making more money and creating the life of your dreams. Thanks guys, I'll talk to you later.